Another recap, and today we're going to talk about why your major pentatonic or why your major blues sucks. Full disclaimer, it's not your fault. So some people will learn the major pentatonic as the minor starting on the sixth. So if talking about the key of A, people will do the minor pentatonic on an F sharp. So you play the same shape that most of people, they only know that shape or that box, but you know that it contains the same notes as the major one. For the sake of understanding from the root, I will do the major pentatonic starting right here. So we have our intervals are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, right? And then you repeat 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, so on and so forth. So this is our major pentatonic in A. It works in theory over the key of A major. Something I talk all the time, right? Chord tones. So the major flaw, no pun intended, with the major pentatonic over the major chord is that in our traditional blues we're playing 1, 4, 5, and all of those chords are dominants, which mean that they're major and they have a minor 7. So a blues in A, it's an A7 to a D7. You can play like this or like this, the 7-9, and the E7. You can also play like this. You can even play like this, right? So what are the notes we have in this A7? Let's talk just about the first chord, right? We will do one chord at a time. So the first chord in the key of A is the A7. What are the notes? It's A as the root. We have a C sharp as the major third. We have the E as the 5 or 5th, and then we have the G as the 7, right? Those are the 4 notes we have in a chord of A7. What are our degrees in a major pentatonic? We have 1, okay? We have 2, not a chord tone. We have 3, chord tone. We have 5, chord tone. We have 6, not a chord tone. And we repeat. So like I told before, in a dominant chord, the most important notes are the 3rd and the 7th, because 1 will determine that the chord it's major, and the 7 it's what it's being asked in a A7, for an example. It's just an A major triad with a 7. And the interval between the 3rd and the 7th, it's called the tritone. That's what I like to call the strongest gravity force in a diatonic key, because it pulls you back to the 1. But in this case, we don't need to get into details because our 1 it's A7. What we need to know is that in our major pentatonic here, we are missing one chord tone, which is one of the most important notes in the dominant chord, which is the 7th. Some people over this major chord will play the minor pentatonic. You have 1 chord tone, minor 3rd, not a chord tone, but there's a way to get around it. 4, not a chord tone. 5, chord tone. 7, chord tone. So you're kind of compromising, right? You're missing the major 3rd, but you are losing with that major 6 as opposed to having the 7, which is a chord tone. So the major has some flaws and the minor has some flaws. How to overcome that? Can we combine those two scales? Yes, we can. In this case, I will combine them, but I will skip the minor 3rd for a simple reason. So it's the major pentatonic, adding the note that we're missing from the minor pentatonic, that it's a chord tone. it will look something like this. It will be 1, 2, 3. Then we have the 4th from the minor pentatonic. We have the 5 that it's common in the major and the minor. Then we have the 6 that is only in the major. Then we have the minor 7 that it's only in the minor. If I play this, it's called mixolydian. A lot of people will say the pentatonic, it's the blues scale, right? And that's just not accurate. You need to learn the chord tones, you need to learn your scales and your diatonic modes, and it's about the phrasing, it's about how you create the tension with the notes that don't belong in a chord but belong in the key, and how you create movement and how you release that tension. So I have a little loop, a little chord here, which is the A7, and I will play the major and the minor. We will hear the notes that are chord tones, the notes that are not chord tones. In the case of the minor pentatonic, we will hear one note that kind of crashes with the chord, and we will learn how to overcome that in the phrasing and how to combine those two scales, because they're both very useful for different applications, and we can also combine them at some point. But let's hear this. So it's my A7, and I will play the major pentatonic over it, right? Right? Chord tone, not a chord tone, chord tone, chord tone, not a chord tone, chord tone, not a chord tone, chord tone, chord tone, not a chord tone, chord tone, not a chord tone. So we're missing the 7. So that's why some people will find difficult to land on some notes that will work on a major pentatonic over a major chord, because you have the 2nd or the 9th that it doesn't really add any blues feel to it. The major 3rd doesn't add anything because it's just a chord tone that it doesn't really enhance anything. And you have the 5 or the 5th, and then you have the 6th, which doesn't hurt. You can rest it, but it doesn't create tension, right? Because the 6th over the major chord, it's also a resting tone per se, right? This doesn't sound blues, right? And some people will it's just boring. So they rely on a minor pentatonic because you have the tension from the minor, you have the 4th that doesn't add much, then 5 as a chord tone, you have the 7 which is very blues chord tone, and then you repeat root, minor over the major, crashes, the 4th doesn't add anything, the 5, 7, root, minor 3rd. So the first way to address the crashing with the minor 3rd, people will kind of bend it. It sounds a lot better than doing with the major, that you have to do a full step, right? And you miss that tension between the minor or going to major, right? That's the bluesy approach. And the 7 that works so good over the 7th chord, and you don't have that note in the major pentatonic, right? So that's why a lot of people rely on a minor one. The problem with the minor one is that if you're not addressing this, the minor third to the major, it sounds wrong. And another issue is that you have this 4th note here that it creates some sort of tension, then it has to be released, and usually you play that in your release note is the minor one that you have to kind of bend. So there's a lot of movement to make this sound right. Few things you can do. Instead of bending, you can just do like a little slide from the minor to the major, and then you play the notes from the minor pentatonic, so you're just addressing the minor third. And what else? That's pretty much it. So what happens when you're playing the major pentatonic? You have some notes that you can rest because you have the chord tones. The other notes, they kind of don't work in the long run. Of course, in a progression, when you're playing a song, you won't stay for 20 bars over that chord and run out of ideas, but there are some resources that are really important to do, and switching between major and minor, but addressing the problem, the issue with the minor third over the first chord, it's super important. So I hope that's helpful. Let me play a little bit so you can get as an example of how to blend the notes from the major and the minor. There's nothing wrong saying you can't play the major 6 over a 7th chord, right? But it can be more jazzy than blues, right? A lot of people would do that as a passage tone, right? You have over the A, you play it as 6 to resolve back into the 5. But when you're soloing, when you're improvising, you get a little less options, I would say, if your target is that major 6. It's a very colorful tone, but you can only resolve that kind of going down to the 5, because you don't have a way to bend this to the A, right? If you're playing 2 notes per string. So let me play a little, mixing these two together, major and minor, and see if you guys can notice where the transition happens, where the shift happens. And we're playing only over the first chord right now, so it goes like this. So many times I will play the minor third to the major thing because it's a point of transition, like, or right. Very often I would do that. I would not always do from the 6 to the 7. It's just a matter of preference. I would never do this to resolve that going up. When I'm playing the 6, I'm always resolving down to the 5, right? If I would never do. But it's just a preference. So I hope this was helpful, useful. One thing happens a lot also in country music, and I don't play country at all. I will never say that. But over like an A chord, you would do the right. So you will have that minor to major. Or over the D. So it's a very common thing to using the minor third as a passing tone to the major. In blues, we just make that a little more dramatic. We just make that a little more exaggerated, right? So that's why a low slide or a bend or a hammer, that you are really accentuating that. That's kind of what you do because you want to bring the drama, right? In country, you do a similar thing, but it sounds a lot more happy because of the way you're interpreting, because the way you're treating the chords. But that's another lesson. I hope this was helpful. Please make sure to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. This is part of the free lessons that I'm offering. If you would like the PDFs from this lesson, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Stay in touch at my website, link down below. I'm launching the masterclass sometime soon. We're in the final adjustments, but all of this material will be right there for free. And if you wish to continue to the paid lessons, then you have the full masterclass. You also have the option to join my one-on-one coaching in music, where we will talk about music business, royalties, songwriting, preparing for a gig or for an audition, how to get the audition, network, professional mindset, signal chain, studio, pedals, tone, guitar in general, not just acoustic. I play a lot of acoustic when I'm recording, composing, and teaching, just because it's more practical. But in my heart, I'm a blues rock guitar player and educator, so we talk a lot about electric guitars, pickups, strings, signal chain, pedals, amps, microphones, preamps, and everything you need to know. So if you are a professional guitar player or you want to become one, my one-on-one coaching lessons are the place to be. So I hope to see you guys sometime next week, and in the meantime, just rock on.